Well, it definitely sounds a lot more aggressive than stock.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Pat Outdoors. Today we're going to be working on my Kooz HP131E. This is the L version with the larger 19-inch front and 16-inch rear wheel set. I'm just going to be fixing what is broken, and we're also going to be turning the power up on this bike since it turns out the controller comes slightly detuned, and according to Kooz, the BMS on the stock battery is able to handle 110 continuous amps, but today we're going to connect to the controller and see if we can tune it a little bit past that just to see what happens. Now, Kooz might sound like a brand new company, but they're actually made by Mototec, who's definitely not new to the e-moto space. They've actually been making gas dirt bikes for well over a decade at this point, so this is definitely not their first rodeo. But this bike's much larger than the electric bikes that they've made in the past, such as the Mototec 5000 watt Pro. That bike's more of a pit bike size, and this one's closer to a Sur-Ron might be. Just for perspective, I'm 5'8" at 180 pounds, and I can't really flat foot this bike unless I have dirt bike boots on. But the pegs are mounted on the higher side as if it was still a pit bike frame with a larger wheel set and longer suspension. Here's my Electro & Co ETM RTR, just for size comparison. This is more of a traditional pit bike size, 14-inch front and 12-inch rear wheel set. And as you can see, the seat height on the HP131E is noticeably higher than the RTR by at least a couple inches. And here's my Sur-Ron Ultra B just for comparison, and it's not quite as big as this. The closest thing I would compare it to as far as size would be like a Talaria XXX. If you guys want to get more information on this bike or any of the HP series, I'll leave a link to Kooz's website in the description below. You can also get yourself $100 off the HP131E by using discount code PATOUTDOORS. Now, unfortunately, I got this bike with a little bit of damage on there. Excuse all the dirt. We've been riding quite a few trails with this bike recently, but the rear plastics were actually crushed from shipping, so I wasn't able to install the rear mud guard. So I reached out to Kooz customer support, and they were able to get me a replacement rear fairing within about a week. I'm gonna roll the bike outside so we can get better lighting, then we're gonna throw on this new fender.
I gotta say, that was quite a bit of disassembly just to replace a rear fender.
Next, we're going to connect to the factory controller, which is actually made by Hobbywing. I'm going to put Kooz's step-by-step instructions on how to download the HW-Motolink app up on screen. Feel free to pause the video so you can follow those steps on how to download their app. For the meantime, I'm going to mock together a makeshift dirt bike stand for the Kooz, since the rear wheel does have to be off the ground when you first initialize the controller.
I know it's kind of ghetto, but I'm not done moving all of our tools to our new property just yet, so I'm just making use of whatever I find on the land.
All right, first we're going to key on, then we're going to open the HW-Motolink app, connect device. It's the only one on screen. I'm going to start with the self-learning feature. Oh, I see why they require the wheel to be off the ground. It's probably going to be like the far driver controller, where it's going to spin the rear wheel at all sorts of different speeds and potentially even go reverse. It pretty much makes sure that the controller is completely calibrated to the motor that's installed. Okay, so it's showing learning completed. Confirm. We're going to go to parameters. Speed control. I'm gonna leave that alone for now. Current parameters. Now this was actually set to 100 from the factory. I may have been messing with it already and I set it to 120. And phase current, I think it was around 340 from factory, but I set it to 380. Just for shits, I'm gonna bump that up just a smidge more. Now these settings are not recommended by Kooz or Mototec at all, since I'm technically going past the rated limit of the BMS on the stock battery. So do this at your own risk. This might void your warranty if you go past the rated limit. I'm just doing it as an experiment to see if the BMS will trip. Throttle response, sport. You can even adjust the speed in all three modes here. Gear 3, I'm just gonna set this to 110, see what happens. It's in kilometers. Gear 2, I'm gonna switch that over to, let's say 80. I'm going to leave gear 1 at 45 kilometers. Flux weakening is enabled. You want to leave this enabled just to make sure that the controller is trying to get as much RPM as possible. Back mode, not sure what that is. I don't think this bike has any sort of reverse button. Speed limit mode, speed limit enabled. Definitely not setting that. What is TCS mode? Is that some sort of traction control? Slopes descend mode, huh. I wonder if you can activate some sort of regen if you're descending a hill, but that would mean that the stock controller would have to have some sort of gyro or tilt sensor built in. What is this professional mode? Whoa. Professional mode even allows you to do even more. Okay, I'm definitely not messing with this for now. EBS mode, electronic braking. So this controller definitely has the capability of adding regen and a bunch of other features, but we're not going to focus on that today. I am just going to save the settings for the meantime. I pretty much just want to see if the bike performs any differently if we crank a little bit more power from the battery. Okay, well, it definitely sounds a lot more aggressive than stock, so let's take this thing out on the road and see if it's any faster. Okay, well, it already definitely feels peppier. All right, mode 3. Okay, that's showing 53 miles per hour, but it was a little bit downhill towards the end there, so I'm going to count that as 51 miles per hour. I'm going to try to find a little bit flatter road though and give this another shot. But just how it is in the self-learning mode, the throttle's still very, very smooth. Ugh. What is that, a freaking possum? All right, let's give this another shot. Oh yeah. It was still a little bit downhill in that last section, so I'm not going to count that as 54 miles per hour. I'm still going to call that 51, maybe 52. Either way, we didn't have to put any new parts on this bike or even have to buy a Bluetooth dongle to connect to the stock controller, and we were able to squeeze a couple more miles per hour. Compared to what I tested it to previously, being a 180-pound rider, I tested this bike initially at 48 miles per hour, which is technically less than what the company claimed it to be, but at least they offer an app that allows you to make changes to the factory tune and turn up the power to whatever you want. I'm gonna keep messing with the tune and refining it over time just to get this thing completely dialed to how I want it to ride, but it's not really the top speed that impresses me, but the amount of torque it has now. Like, it's a pure acceleration from, oh, this thing's got so much torque now.
I'm pretty happy that the BMS didn't trip, so that means the battery is able to put out a little bit more than the 110 amps continuous that the manufacturer stated it can. You know what, let's do some trail riding. Let's take this thing back in the woods and see how it performs in off-road situations. I want to see what kind of lap time we can get. So I've only tested a few bikes at our home track so far. The ETM RTR Lite, which has the 6.7 kit and 72 volt battery. I think I got something like a minute and 46 seconds with that. The Hey Bike Villain, which I got a minute and 56 seconds. The Vipku H3, which I got 2 minutes and 1 second. And the 60 volt Yasma Ion 10 Pro, which I got a minute and 48 seconds. Let's see what kind of time we can get on the Kooz HP131E L model. I'm just going to be using my iPhone timer, so I'm probably going to have to adjust the time by 1 or 2 seconds since I have to reach to start and stop it. But I will post to the actual time later in the video. Ooh, a little jumpy at the start there. This thing makes a lot of torque. The good thing about the larger wheel set on this bike is it gets through the really rough stuff much faster than the small bikes. I didn't even do a warm-up lap yet. We just got here last night and it was raining, so I figured I let it dry overnight before we go out on the ride for this thing. A little bit rusty. I'm gonna see if I can get a better lap time the second time around. So obviously I had to take some time to start and stop the timer since I'm here by myself today, but I can already tell that this is a lot faster than the other bikes. I want to say maybe a minute and 45. I'll put the actual time up on the screen, but I actually want to give this another go. All right, round two. minute and 44.8 seconds, and this is with me reaching for the timer to start and stop it. So this probably means that the Kooz HP131E is a minute and 41 second bike on our home track, which is significantly faster than any of the other bikes that we've tested so far. I think a lot of that has to do with the 16-19 wheel set, making it a little bit smoother to ride over the rougher stuff compared to the bikes with the 14-12 wheel set or even the 17-14. Also combined with the amount of power that this bike makes, which is over 8,000 watts when you have it tuned. Overall, I'm super impressed with this bike so far, considering we haven't even had to buy any sort of upgrades or anything to this bike. Just straight up ride it and go. I don't really see a need to upgrade anything, since it makes so much power to begin with. No 72 volt conversions, no controller upgrades, 35 amp hour. It's already got plenty of capacity right out of the box, so this is probably going to be one of the very few bikes that I'm just going to leave it as it is for a while. I don't really want to turn it into a supermoto like my other dirt bikes, because this thing just does so well off-road, and I don't really want to lose that functionality. If you guys want to get more information on the Kooz HP131E, the L and the M versions, I'll leave a link to their listing in the description below. You can also get yourself $100 off this bike by using discount code PATOUTDOORS. But I do have to get started on some projects around the house, so this is probably going to be all the riding that we're going to be doing today. If you guys enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you like this kind of content, want to keep up with some of my reviews or some of my projects, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn your bell notification on. But this is going to be it for today. Thank you for watching.